Professional detachment is hard when your coworker accidentally claims you for life. The zenith spire was usually quiet during the gamma shift, a silence that felt heavy and thick, like a blanket pulled up over the station's metallic bones. To Liam Cross, the security console was just a glowing desk where he drank too much synthetic caffeine and tried to keep his eyes open. But to Varia, standing rigid at his side, this was a battlefield in stasis. Varia was a draconid, a species built of obsidian scales, silent efficiency, and a terrifying amount of muscle density. Most of the station crew gave her a wide berth, mistaking her stoicism for aggression. Liam, operating on that uniquely Terran brand of oblivious empathy, just thought she looked lonely. Honestly, the cultural disconnect was bound to snap eventually. When we humans have this habit, don't we? We see something sharp and dangerous, and our first instinct isn't to run, it's to see if it needs a snack or a kind word. It's that Terran empathy, a biological quirk that makes us pack bond with anything that has a pulse, regardless of how many claws it possesses. The tactical map hovered between them, a shimmering blue sphere of shipping lanes and docking protocols. Liam rubbed the back of his neck, sighing. You know, Varia, I was looking at these patrol routes you laid out for the summit, Liam said, his voice soft, scratching at the silence. The modulation is perfect. You predicted the traffic bottleneck in Sector 4 before it even happened. It's brilliant. Varia didn't move, but inside the heavy plating of her ceremonial armor, her biology was rioting. Draconids don't do praise. And in her culture, acknowledgement is a transaction of debt and blood. But Liam gave it away like it was nothing, like air. The most dangerous weapon on the station wasn't a laser, it was a human complement. I am merely performing my function, Coordinator Cross, Varia rumbled. Her voice was a low tectonic shift, vibrating the coffee in Liam's mug. Liam chuckled, leaning back in his chair, exposing his throat in a way that made Varia's two primary hearts stutter out of sync. He was so fragile, so soft, and yet he saw her competence and valued it over her lethality. Don't sell yourself short, Liam said, turning to look at her with a tired, genuine smile. Truth is, I feel a lot safer knowing you're the one watching the door. I trust you, Varia. Completely. That was the catalyst. It was the human instinct to reassure. It colliding violently with xenobiology. To a draconid, being told you are the sole guardian of a fragile being's safety isn't small talk. It is a solicitation. It is the verbal equivalent of offering one's neck. Various thermal regulation systems failed. A flush of heat turned the scales along her neck from black to a glowing, embarrassed magma red. Her nictitating membranes flickered rapidly. She didn't mean to propose, but the translator didn't get the memo. Overwhelmed by the sudden intimacy of his trust, Varia let out a complex, chittering sound, a guttural, subvocal vibration meant to express a desire to shield him from the void. It was a reflex, a biological imperative triggered by his softness. Then, the automated translation matrix, hooked into the room's PA system for the upcoming diplomatic summit, woke up. No, the electronic voice didn't just speak. It boomed, echoing through the corridors of the spire, reaching every dignitary and guard within a 3-mile radius. Alert. Life bond acknowledge. The warrior Varia pledges her blade, her blood, and her brood pouch to the human Liam Cross. The nest is now established. Mating rights are exclusive and immediate. The silence that followed was absolute. Liam blinked. The smile froze on his face, not out of fear, but out of a profound, buffering confusion. He looked at the speaker on the wall, then back at Varia. Did the ceiling just talk about a brood pouch? Liam asked, his voice cracking slightly. Varia stood frozen. If she could have melted into a puddle of molten slag, she would have. She had just broadcasted the draconid equivalent of a feral love sonnet to the entire sector, because a human told her she was good at her job. This was the hard lesson of cultural nuance, smacking them both in the face. Intent and reception are two very different solar systems. Before Liam could ask if nest was a metaphor for the office, The door to the command center hissed open. Warlord Kale, Varia's commanding officer and a creature the size of a small shuttlecraft, stomped in. He looked from the flushed Varia to the bewildered Liam. I was unaware the courtship had proceeded to the pledging phase. The warlord grunted, his eyes narrowing. This complicates the duty roster. Liam raised a finger, opening his mouth to explain that it was just a misunderstanding. Just a bit of praise gone wrong. But then he saw Varia. She was trembling. Not from fear, but from mortification. If he rejected the translation now in front of her commander, it wouldn't just be an awkward correction. In her culture, it would be a public severance, a rejection of her protection. He looked at the terrifying alien warrior who had accidentally claimed him, and his human heart did that stupid, empathetic thing again. He couldn't humiliate her. I mean, Liam started, rubbing the back of his neck again, his face burning. It's a recent development? Warlord Cal stared at them for a beat that lasted a geological epoch. Then he simply snorted, a sound like a compressor venting steam, and tapped his datapad. Paperwork by 0800, the warlord grumbled, already losing interest now that the threat was emotional rather than ballistics-based. Do not let this domestication interfere with the perimeter scans. When the door hissed shut, the silence returned, but this time it wasn't heavy. It was electric. Liam exhaled, a long, shaky breath that seemed to deflate his entire posture. He turned to Varia, expecting to see relief. Instead, he saw a creature built for war, looking as if she wanted to dismantle herself bolt by bolt. Her scales were still that flustered, radiating heat, and she wouldn't meet his eyes. Come on, Liam said softly. Let's take a walk. They found a maintenance alcove overlooking the starlight of Sector 7. It was cramped, smelling of ozone and recycled air, but it was private. Varia finally looked at him, her golden eyes wide with a mixture of awe and horror. You lied to a high warlord, she whispered. The translator on her collar buzzed, struggling to convey the depth of her disbelief. You accepted a life bond to spare me shame. This is irrational. It is dangerous. You must rescind it. You must tell the council it was a glitch. Liam leaned against the bulkhead, crossing his arms. He didn't look like a man in crisis. He looked like a man trying to solve a puzzle. See, that's the thing about crisis management, he said, looking out at the stars. If we go back in there and say it was a glitch, Kale reassigns you. You go back to the front. I get a new partner who probably doesn't know how I take my coffee or that I get anxious when the comms go dead. He looked at her then, really looked at her. And honestly, I don't want a new partner. Varia's claws clicked nervously against her thigh plating. The concept of emotional intelligence was flooding her system, overriding her tactical subroutines. She realized with a start that suppressing the connection had been the hardest part of her assignment. But the bond, Varia insisted, her voice trembling. It is not a metaphor, Liam. It implies closeness. It implies a merging of resources. It implies that I will bring you nutrient-rich prey when you are ill. Liam laughed, a warm, genuine sound that bounced off the metal walls. I mean, I'm terrible at cooking, so I'm okay with you bringing dinner, he teased gently. But Varia, listen, we've been partners for 2 years. We already share resources. We already watch each other's backs. The only thing that's changed is that now there's a label on it. He stepped closer, invading her personal space in that fearless, stupidly human way. He reached out and rested his hand on her forearm. The contact was electric. Biology took over. Under his warm, soft palm, Varia's scales shifted from the burning red of embarrassment to a cool, contented deep violet. Her dual hearts, previously hammering out a panic rhythm, suddenly slowed, thumping in a synchronized heavy beat that she felt in her throat. This was the human touch. It wasn't a tactical grip. It wasn't an attack. It was just presence. The translator was aggressive, Liam admitted, his voice dropping to a murmur. But was it wrong? I don't know. Maybe it just said the quiet part out loud. Varia looked down at his hand, so pale and fragile against her obsidian armor. She realized then that there was no fabrication here. To deny the bond now wouldn't just be a bureaucratic correction, it would be a lie. The transparency of the moment was terrifying, but it was also liberating. "You are amenable to the terms?" she asked, the hope in her voice so raw it almost hurt to hear. Liam squeezed her arm. "I think I can handle being the protected one in a terrifying alien marriage pact." "Yeah," he smiled. "Just, maybe ease me into the brood pouch talk?" Varya let out a sound that was half hiss, half laugh. "Agreed," she said, her posture finally relaxing, the tension draining out of her massive frame. They walked back to the command center, not as colleagues scrambling to cover a mistake, but as a unit. The High Council was waiting, screens flashing with demands for explanation. Liam didn't flinch. He walked in, sat down at his console, and picked up his cold coffee. Varia took her place beside him, a silent, looming shadow. When the lead diplomat opened his mouth to question the outburst, Varia simply shifted her stance, placing herself subtly between the hologram and Liam. It was a small movement, a micro-adjustment, but the message was clear. Mine. Liam caught the movement and hid a smile behind his mug. The universe was vast, cold, and full of misunderstandings. But as he looked at the heat map of Sector 4, he knew one thing for sure. He was exactly where he belonged.